everyone, this is Hope from Pros Before Bros, and I got my glasses. I'm so excited. So, yes, I can finally see now, you guys. I can see halfway decent. It looks like, according to my doctor, my right eye was a little bit rough. My left eye, thankfully, hasn't changed that much, and that's the eye that I was very concerned about. Um, but it's okay. It's all right. And I got new glasses, and I'm excited because I can finally see at least a little bit better. I'm having that fishbowl effect though because the lenses are a little bit thicker, and I feel like I'm stuck, essentially in a fishbowl. So I'm trying to get used to that. It turns out I'm more farsighted than what I am nearsighted, and it does this all the time. It flip flops. Is usually, I think my first pair of glasses I was farsighted, and then I was nearsighted, and then I was in between, and then I ended up back here. So whatever, it's okay. I can see. Thank God. Anyways, so this video is gonna be yet another apology. It feels like I'm doing these a lot more than I care to do. I really want to apologize because last week was Contemporarython, and I had promised on my Contemporarython TBR video that I would tell you guys my daily readings. Like I would do a daily vlog for each book I read, and unfortunately that didn't happen. And I don't really have much of an excuse on it, except for there was actually a few days late last week that I got really sick. Oh gosh, my throat is crazy. But I didn't really have much of an excuse. I was off all last week. I went to go visit my family for a couple days. That was fun. I got to visit my great-grandniece. That was also fun. She's walking and talking now. So she's one of those gals that wants a lot of attention. And I couldn't get hardly any reading done. And then, of course, you guys remember this, I'm sure, when I showed you my weekly injection insulin pen and that scary monstrosity that I have to stick in me every Friday. Well, I forgot to put the injection in on Friday, ended up doing it Saturday, and my body's still not used to it. So I ended up getting violently sick to the point where even getting out of bed was damn near impossible because I had like vertigo going on top of the sickness. It was a mess. It was a horrible mess. My doctor still wants me to try to take this medicine because it is getting my numbers down, which is gradually meaning that my A1C will also go down at little paces. So, yeah, I'm trying to keep positive with it. It's so discouraging, especially when, I don't want to be in bed and in pain and suffering. But at the same time, I need to do something, right? So that's my apology, you guys. I really wanted to do the Contemporarython daily vlogs with you all and kind of introduce you to what I'm like on vacation, which is a sloppy mess. I like to wear PJs when I'm home. But yeah, my vacation wasn't too bad though. My birthday was last Friday, so I got to spend a day with a lot of family. I saw a couple friends, and I got to hang out with my husband. My husband took me out for a nice dinner on Saturday before all hell broke loose. So that's good. That's good. I'll take it. But yeah, let me just go ahead and tell you what books I was able to read for Contemporarython. I'm going to do a little review of them. Got some good books, got some bad books. I was only able to get 3 done, but I feel good about talking about those 3. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. The first book that I rated, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the books that I enjoyed the most and just kind of tear it down. So it'll be easy because there's only three. So yeah, the first book, and I don't think this is going to be much of a surprise to you guys, was Fun House or Fun Home. Sorry, I want to keep saying Fun House like the carnival. Fun Home, and this is by Alison Bechdel. Now, this I was kind of it's iffy to put in ContemporaryAthon because it's not contemporary fiction, but I was so eager to read this book, and I am so glad I did read this book. It is an amazing book. So, you've heard of graphic novels. This is not just a graphic novel, it's a graphic memoir. Something I have never experienced before, and I was so stoked about reading it. I think the only graphic memoir that I could say I read, and I don't even know if it is a memoir technically, was Blankets, and that was one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. This one I think is going to be its replacement because I loved it so much. But Fun Home is by Alison Bechdel, and it actually is now a Broadway musical. So it's kind of a big deal. But this is a family tragic tragic comic. There we go. It won the National Book Critics Circle Award. Actually, no, it didn't. It was a finalist. It was a finalist for that. And it was published in 2005. So it's been out there for a while, but I think with the fact that it's starting to become a musical and it's starting to get popular now, a lot of places are putting it out, in circulation. That way you can see it more. Amazon had this in my recommended reads, and then I believe this was at Barnes and Noble. They put it out for their recommended reads last week. So it's starting to grow in popularity. It's a beautiful book. So it talks about the story of Allison. She does these beautiful little comic strips in here. And it talks about her growing up not only in like the funeral home industry because her family was in that industry. It talks about growing up with her siblings and her mother and her father. And it focuses more so around her father's relationship with Allison. Allison had a very unusual relationship with him in the sense that her father was very secretive about things, and it turns out that her father was a homosexual. And this takes all place in like the 1960s and the 70s. Her parents got married during the war, and back then also that happened. A lot of times that was unfortunately a case, and women and men had to basically pretend that they weren't, gay, lesbian, what have you. And yeah, it was really intense. This book was really, really intense. But she talks about finding out this and her own coming out. So she identifies as lesbian, and it grows up knowing that this is the case. She doesn't have any sort of attraction to boys. She's attracted to girls. She's still trying to understand this. So she's going through the same thing, and it becomes relevant or apparent to her that her father is a homosexual shortly after she talks to her mother and lets her know that she's a lesbian. Her mother was very disapproving. However, her father was somewhat more accepting of it. So it talks about their relationship developing from childhood up to when she was in college. And then he unfortunately dies in a very tragic circumstance. It looks like an accident, but Allison believes it was a suicide. So she talks about that. She talks about the grieving process and just how she had to start to learn how, to be herself essentially. So it's such a good book. I really enjoyed this book. The graphics are beautiful in it. And Alice's perspective is just as beautiful. And one thing that I could really connect with on the level of this book is the relationship dynamic with her father and her. They had a very difficult relationship when she was growing up. Those things that she didn't understand about him, those things he didn't understand about her, and they were at odds with each other. And every human has their flaw, of course, and her father had plenty at the time, like he had a bad temper. So she visits that, and I felt so much for this girl because it reminded me so much of my relationship with my father. I love my father to pieces, but when I was a teenager, we didn't get along at all. So I could relate easily to what she was explaining in this book with that relationship and just struggling with finding a perfect middle with him, and unfortunately having that cut short in a very tragic circumstance. So I really did enjoy this book. I ended up giving it, I believe, 4 stars. And I know that in the past I've told you guys that usually with graphic novels I could pitch them after I read them because I know I'm not going to read them again. I don't think I could do that with this one. I really enjoyed this, and I could see myself revisiting it quite a bit. So definitely check this out. Like I said, Barnes & Noble. I don't know if all the Barnes & Noble has it up, but the Barnes & Noble that I go to highly recommends this, and they actually have it out on their recommends bookshelf right now. So amazing. I loved it. You guys got to check it out. So the next book that I read for ContemporaryAthon, I actually read on my ebook or my Kindle. I'm talking like my mom, my gosh. Ebook. She still calls the Blu-ray player a VCR. It is so funny. But anyway, this probably won't come as a surprise because this has been hyped up so much lately. But it's Caroline Kepnes's You. As you can see, sorry, it's a black and white Kindle. I'm a very basic kind of gal. So I read this and I ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought it was fairly good. But if you haven't seen the new show on Netflix on this series, I guess it's going to be a series. We'll get to that here. It's a first, how do I want to put this? It's a first person interpretation inside the book. So our speaker or the voice of the book is named Joe. He is a bookseller at a bookstore. Oh God, so sad, so sad. And it begins with him at the bookstore, and he meets this girl that he is just enamored with, and her name, or she goes by her name of her last name Beck. Her first name is Guinevere. So he meets her one day and gets this obsession with her and actually starts following her around, goes into her apartment when she's not there, just all kinds of crazy stuff. And then it turns out that he plays himself so well that he ends up dating her, and he gets even more obsessed with her without her knowing, and she doesn't really find out until much later in the book. Yeah, crazy book. Crazy. And it kept me very interested. The writing was okay. The one thing that I think gave it the 3 stars, though, that really validated the 3 stars, in my opinion, is it started to feel like at the middle of the book, probably like the middle-ish end of the book, it felt like the author was just kind of grabbing at straws at that point and throwing so many different scenarios inside the book to kind of spice it up to keep it going. And some of it I just felt was unnecessary. There's a lot of violent ends in the book. There's also a few things that are just, I feel like they're there just for the drama, and that's really it. It doesn't necessarily make it a horrible book, but I just felt like some of it was unnecessary. As you guys remember me talking about, what was it? A Simple Favor. I did not like that book at all. I gave it, I think, 1 star. I was not happy about it because it felt like the same scenario. The author was grasping for straws and just throwing these very outlandish situations at these characters that just, it just wasn't needed. It wasn't as bad as that, but it was still fairly, it was like, really, is that necessary? So I did actually give it that 3 star rating. I definitely think it is a good read. I want to tell you guys not to read it. Just keep that in mind that there are scenarios in there that they throw that in, like extra unnecessary stuff in, and it can be a little bit frustrating if you are reading it and you just don't understand why they're doing the things they're doing. But I really wanted to pick that book up in particular because a lot of people have been talking about it, and it's been like a buzz article. If you get onto Facebook, I don't know how many articles I ran into like in the past week where people, psychologists in particular, were talking about how women and men are attracted to this Joe character and they find him to be absolutely perfect. That he's perfection, and they want to have a relationship with him, and they don't understand why Beck doesn't want this relationship after a while. Kind of creepy that you feel that way, especially some of the things that he does in this book. You're just like, why the fuck do you want to be in a relationship with this guy? It's interesting though, and I feel like we do have a pattern right now that we find, um, these kind of multi-tiered or multi-dimensional characters with deep-rooted, dark, spooky things going on with them, um, that we do find intrigue with them. And one of the articles that I read was really interesting. I wish I could remember who wrote it, but they were talking about, the character Joe from You, and they were also talking about, fascination with Ted Bundy, which everybody's been talking about the Ted Bundy movie coming out with Zac Efron, and also the Netflix series that's out talking about the case, and just Ted Bundy's mannerisms and the fact that he could basically get witnesses that were going against him inside the court, get him on their side, like just all this interesting stuff. And of course, we have the 50th anniversary of the Charles Manson murders that is also coming up in the spotlight right now. And a lot of people are looking at these cases and, of course, looking at this fictional character. They're male, they're, white, and a lot of women, for whatever reason, find some sort of attraction to them, whether it's sexual, whether it is just the charisma that they had possessed. It's really interesting. I found it very interesting to read these perspectives and try to figure it out. Because clearly I don't have any interest in that. I don't want any crazy in my life. My life is crazy enough without the crazy boo on top of that. So no, thank you. Um, but yeah, it was really kind of an interesting twist. And I would love to hear what you guys have to say about it. If you've read this book, or if you follow, the series, or you've watched the Ted Bundy series even, let me know what you guys thought about that kind of, reaction from, specifically, can't talk, specifically from females, the reactions to characters such as Joe. So, yeah, that was one of the books I read. And the last book I read, it was a shit show. I'm just going to come out and say it. And I really hate saying that because I was really looking forward to this book. I felt like it had so much potential. That book is a little something different, and it's the 14 viewpoints of being in love or falling in love. This book is by Sandy Hall. It's a Swoon Reads book, which Swoon Reads, I believe, is a fairly recent book that publisher that are releasing books. I think this might have been their first of the bunch that they released. Guys, I hated this book. Hated it. I gave it 1 star. I almost DNF'd it quite a few times. I believe it was about 3 times, and finally I was like, I'm just going to push through it. I'm going to get it done. This book was so frustrating, and it follows the characters of Gabe and Leah. Gabe and Leah are very one-dimensional characters. They're basically just mentions inside this book. We look at the viewpoints of a squirrel. We look at the viewpoints of a bench that talks about these characters' butts all day. And a couple other, like, friends, roommates. This all takes place in a college setting. And basically, Gabe and Leah are in a creative writing class, and they're slowly falling in love. The creative writing teacher has this game that she likes to play every semester of who's going to hook up with who. Seems a little bit childish to me, but whatever. And yeah, she pegs these two. And I just, I did not like this. I felt like the writing was just a bit boring and a bit overhyped. This author in particular was using like product plugs, like using Starbucks as a reference, Apple, just things that, do you really need to have it? I mean, do you really need to have that in there? So that was frustrating. You guys know that's my biggest pet peeve. I hated that part of the book as well. And of course, the characters, Gabe and Leah, I feel like I didn't get to know them that much. It was like the first chapter was I think it was Leah's roommate, and Leah's roommate is basically vaguely painted out as this badass that is going to give him fake IDs, and Leah's like, oh no, fake IDs are wrong. I'm sorry, I don't know why I grabbed my pigtails. But anyway, that was not planned. Anyways, she's painted as a very one-dimensional, very goody two-shoes, Mary Jane type, and I just, it's boring. It's such an overplayed character. Give me a character with a little bit of spice. Give me a character that has a little more depth to her. And of course, Gabe is painted as the dark, brooding, well, not even dark. It's like he doesn't really have a personality at all. He doesn't talk to really anybody. But he has this mysterious past. It was very lazy writing. I wish I could have said something a bit better. The concept is great. I feel like the concept was there. It was a very interesting concept. And I feel like if the author maybe had developed that a little bit more and then done something with perspectives or viewpoints, that would have been a very interesting take. But the way that the book had been laid out, it just reminded me, it was almost like I opened my portfolio with my writing in it, and it was just all my character profiles or character profile interactions. Those snippets I usually write of a scene that you want to put inside the book at some point, but you're just not quite sure how to incorporate it yet. It felt very drafty, and I didn't like that. So, unfortunately, this is a hard pass for me. It's going to be in my unhaul bag. I'm sorry. I really wanted to like you. I really did, but no. So yeah, those were the 3 books that I read last week. This week I'm planning on starting Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. A lot of people have been talking about this book. It's been out for a while. I'm really excited about it. It's a young adult contemporary. And I believe that the main character suffers from anxiety. So, really excited about reading that. I think I'm going to start that tonight. But other than that, that's all I really have for you. Please feel free to leave comments or questions below in regards to these books. Let me know if you read any of them and what your thoughts were. And of course, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about ContemporaryAthon. I hope everybody enjoyed themselves. I wish I could have done a little bit more, but hey, there's always a next ContemporaryAthon. And hopefully everything will be a-okay by then. So thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, I'll see you later. Bye.